Hello, welcome back to another Time podcast episode. Now, today we are shifting our focus from Europe back over to the Middle East, over with Israel and Hamas. From NBCNews.com, I have an article for us. Israel War Live updates. World Central Kitchen decoratees reported death of aid workers in strike. Alrighty, so straight off the bat, there's a video, and I'm going to play that and get that out of the way. And then I will read down the article. Alright, let me just share my screen over here. Alright, unmute, widen the screen.
Tonight, the fiery aftermath of what appears to be a targeted strike in Syria. Smoke and flames billowing from an Iranian diplomatic building in Damascus. Debris scattered on the streets. Iran says the blast killed 2 generals and 5 officers from its Revolutionary Guard, and it's blaming Israel and vowing revenge. Israel not commenting. Iran is a primary backer of both Hezbollah and Hamas, as fears grow of a widening conflict outside Gaza, where today Israel announced the end of what it called a 2-week counter-terror raid on Al-Shifa Hospital, leaving behind a trail of destruction. Israel says Hamas used the hospital as a base, and that Israeli commandos killed 200 militants and captured senior Hamas operatives. The U.S. saying Hamas is hiding among civilians.
Hamas should not be operating out of hospitals. But as we've also said, we do not want firefights in a hospital.
The World Health Organization says at least 21 patients died during the Israeli siege. And Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry said they found bodies of civilians decomposing in the dirt. Among them, Dr. Ahmed Makatma, according to his family and Palestinian media.
The situation in Gaza is still catastrophic.
A dedicated surgeon, his colleagues said he refused to leave his patients behind.
He opted to stay in northern Gaza, in Shifa and Al-Ahli, to look after his patients.
And Israel's military saying tonight an Iranian-made drone hit an Israeli naval base. There were no casualties, but Israel calling it a very serious incident. Lester?
Alrighty, now from that, no way, Gatorade, go away. That is the end of that. And I'm not interested in your rant about Gatorade. Anyway, back on track. So a few people died in the airstrikes. A Iranian building was hit, therefore widening the conflict, which is not what we want. So we are heading over to the What We Know section. The World Central Kitchen Aid Organization said in a statement it was aware of the reports that members of its team were killed while working on food distribution efforts, and an NBC News crew saw the bodies of people wearing clothing with the World Trade Center kitchen, not World Trade Center, that got blown up, World Center kitchen logo as they were taken into the Aqsa Martyrs Hospital in Deir al-Balah. This is a tragedy, the World Central Kitchen said. Humanitarian aid workers and civilians should never be a target, ever. The Gaza government media office, which is run by Hamas, said at least 4 foreign aid workers and 1 Palestinian were killed in an Israeli strike. Tehran has blamed Israel for an airstrike that killed a senior Iran military commander near the Iranian embassy in Syria today. Israeli officers declined to comment on the incident, which risks worsening the already high tensions in the region. And like I previously said, that would widen the conflict, which we don't want, because then that means we gotta send more stuff or we have to potentially get involved. The Israeli military has withdrawn from Gaza's main hospital after a 2-week raid. The Israel Defense Forces said its troops and tanks had withdrawn from Al-Shifa after killing hundreds of Hamas fighters, as well as seizing weapons and intelligence documents. The World Health Organization said 21 patients died during the operation. which left the medical complex in ruins and those sheltering at the site in dire conditions. Palestinian officials said bodies had been left scattered in the dirt around burned-out buildings. So obviously there's a war crime there too, because it is a war crime to attack a hospital, because they aren't supposed to be attacked whatsoever. Tens of thousands of Israelis marched against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu last night in the largest protest since the war began. The crowds who gathered in Jerusalem, including families of Israelis still held in Gaza, called for new elections. The death toll in Gaza has surpassed 32,800, including at least 27 people who have died in malnutrition, according to the enclave's health ministry. Another 75,000 have been reported injured. The Israeli military said at least 252 soldiers were killed since the beginning of the ground invasion of Gaza. So obviously there's a couple things that need to be discussed there. Let me take a drink of my tea. Okay. Now obviously there's a huge problem there with this conflict potentially being widened, and the amount of death tolls and the protests, because protests usually don't have a good outcome. They always have a little bit of violence and whatnot. The Biden administration communicated directly to Iran today that the U.S. did not know about the strike on its consulate in Damascus and wasn't involved in any way, according to two U.S. officials. The two other U.S. officials said the administration was told about the operation in Syria, while Israeli planes were in the air but didn't know what the target was. The United States had no involvement in the strike, and we did not know about it ahead of time, a spokesperson from the National Security Council said in a statement. U.S. officials still do not have an independent confirmation from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps commander, Mohammed Reza Zahid was among those killed in the strike, according to the two additional U.S. officials. Israeli officials have declined to comment on the strike. So, potential war declared against Israel and Iran. Haha. Are starting to get into this conflict even more. Oh, this is going to end horrible. Jerusalem. Thousands of Israelis took to the streets in Jerusalem today, continuing a 3-day protest against Netanyahu's government and demanding new elections. The protests have gathered in intensity as the war in Gaza nears the end of its 6 months, and angered at the government's handling of the 134 Israeli hostages still held by the Islamic movement Hamas in Gaza has grown. So this is pretty bad, because they just keep protesting. Anyway, back to it. We're here to protest to ask for having elections as soon as possible. We feel like we got it to the edge. We really needed to get rid of Bibi, said Tima Ben, a protester in Jerusalem using Netanyahu's nickname. Netanyahu's right-wing coalition faced some of the biggest protests in Israel's war history last year, when hundreds of thousands joined weekly demonstrations against plans to overhaul the powers of the Supreme Court, which protesters saw as an attack on Israel's democratic foundation. Netanyahu has repeatedly ruled out early elections, which opinion polls suggest he could lose, saying that to go to the polls in the middle of the war would only reward Hamas. Do you mean to help the Gaza people, the people living in Gaza, that you keep blowing up with tanks, artillery, fighter jets, cruise missiles, killing civilians? There's a whole long list of how this would benefit the people you are trying to protect, which you probably don't care about because they aren't your people. They are Gaza. They are Palestinians. So therefore, you do not care about them in the slightest. Now, do you? And if someone can tell me otherwise, hoo-hoo, do I not believe them? Anyway. Well, that's just rude. Surveys indicate that most Israelis blamed Netanyahu, Israel's longest-serving prime minister, for the security failures that led to the devastating attack by Hamas fighters on communities in the southern Israel on October 7th, in which around 1,200 people were killed according to Israeli tallies, and scores of hostages were taken. They are not concerned about what happens in the country and with the people. They are concerned about maintaining their position in government. They work for themselves, not for the people. Simple as that, said a protester, Rafael Shaggavish. Adding a complication, Netanyahu also has faced protests by ultra-Orthodox Jewish demonstrators. Angry at the removal of exemptions, they have kept young students in religious seminars from compulsory military services. Chef Jose Andres is heartbroken and grieving the reported deaths of the World Central Kitchen staff members in Gaza tonight. Erez, the organization's founder, wrote on X that the members of the team were killed in the IDF airstrike. He described them as angels whom he worked beside in several countries, including Turkey and Ukraine. They are not nameless, Andres wrote. The Israeli government needs to stop this indiscriminate killing, he said. It needs to stop restricting humanitarian aid, stop killing civilians and aid workers, and stop using food as weapons. No more innocent lives lost. Now, while I agree with what his statement says, is anyone really going to follow through with it? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. So I do not believe one person is going to actually listen to what he says. The Australian government is working to confirm reports that one of its citizens has been killed while working in Gaza. A Foreign Affairs Department spokesperson said in a statement, "We have been cleared on the need for civilian lives to be protected in this conflict." The statement said, "We have been very clear that we expect humanitarian workers in Gaza to have safe and unimpeded access to doing their life-saving work." It provided no additional details, citing privacy concerns. So obviously people are not too happy, about someone that's trying to help everyone just got blown up pretty much by the people they're helping. Not people they're helping, by the Israeli military. Which then is horrible on several different levels. But that is all the news I have for you today. Thank you all for joining. Subscribe if you enjoy this type of content, and if you want to see more of it. But until then, I'll see you next time. But bye-bye!